very much for this inspiring talk. I'll make sure I put Calcutta in my destination list.
Our next speaker is Arndell LeBlanc, whose documentary and recovery work in post-Katrina New Orleans led him to sign up for Concordia University, where he is now in his 4th year studying journalism. In 2011, LeBlanc won the Lieutenant Governor's Award for his work in post-earthquake Haiti, most notably for establishing a free mobile clinic. His clinic also performed the first census in the neighborhood, thus revealing the causes of many common ailments. While in the country, he filed live reports for CBC and CJAD, describing the current political and recovery efforts. LeBlanc returned to Concordia and helped found its chapter of Journalists for Human Rights, an international organization dedicated to educating citizens around the world about their rights. The Concordia chapter is currently the star chapter of the organization, producing 4 different radio shows, and are organizing the Canadian premiere of the award-winning documentary, The Truth That Wasn't There. All this in their first year as an official CSU club. He's also the Vice President Operations of the newly formed Concordia Student Emergency Response Team. He is Search and Rescue Technician and an intern for the Department of Emergency Management. Most recently, he has been nominated for Concordia's Alumni Association's Outstanding Student Award and is working on a thesis of his proposed use of rapidly deployable radio stations to post-disaster situations. Please help welcome Mr. Arndell, who will be speaking on the activities of journalists for human rights in his trip to Haiti.
Okay, firstly I have to say that I used to do improv and would speak without a microphone, so having a metal microphone in front of me sometimes throws me off a little bit. But I'll try not to run across the stage and do polarities in front of you. First of all, I really have to thank the organizers of this event for, first of all, allowing this discussion to happen within Concordia University as a context. Also, to put me on the same stage as people that I have brought to my events that I'm too honored to be in the same spot. To be honest, Flora, who's right in front of me right now, Flora Terah is one of the reasons why JHR started moving in the direction we're going. When JHR really started producing media, so to speak, well, really producing media, we were at the Youth Action Montreal conference, and during one of the speeches, a lady mentioned a woman with an amazing life story. And this woman, well, of course I'm speaking of this Flora, was gracious enough to give us our first ever interview. So at this time, it only involved myself and a couple other individuals, and a shaky camera job maybe, but it was one of the most profound interviews that we had had at the time. People who watched it really saw beyond just the interview and really saw the character of Flora. And she has such a tremendous story that I'm honored just to be on the same stage as you, Flora. I really appreciate this. Moving on with Journalists for Human Rights. As was said, we're a Concordia group. This is the first year that we've really been truly active, and believe it or not, we have a budget of $250, so it's not much of a budget to do much of anything at all. Our budget also has been divided into $100 only on printing, so technically, if you're good at math, that leaves us $150 per year to run events. Yet so far, we have 4 radio programs that go on, and one of which, the Rights Report, which is hosted by our Adam Bema, who's actually in this room, so you might be able to spot him out at some point. Mr. Adam Bema has the Rights Report, which is now being broadcast not only in Montreal, but also in Ghana. So we're starting to bring this message around the world. And before I go on more about Journalists for Human Rights or about myself, I want to just clear one thing up about Journalists for Human Rights. A lot of people have equated it to quarterbacks for touchdowns, such as journalists are supposed to be fighting for human rights in the first place. But I think we've all seen that a lot of times in the media, and on multiple occasions, we see media that is just candy media. It's Mickey Mouse journalism. It's journalism that's just giving you what the viewer wants, but not necessarily what the viewer needs, because the journalists are supposed to be the fourth estate. We're supposed to look after the people. That's one of the reasons why journalists started to exist. And at this point, we've seemed to have evolved into journalists who just want to give what the mass media wants, what people want, the Britney Spears stories, the Whitney Houston stories. I mean, it's a tragedy that someone died, but as we've seen, that one person dies and the whole world seems to grieve, while thousands and thousands of people are dying around the world, and no one seems to care. So this is one of the reasons why Journalists for Human Rights is an important organization, and that's one of the reasons why we support it, and the dedication of the people who are on this team is actually one of the main reasons why I keep myself motivated and don't freak out in the morning when I look at my to-do list. But I'm just going to move on from there. Firstly, as you might have heard in my introduction, I'm very disaster management oriented. And if anybody in here is an engineer or a doctor, and the engineer shout out was actually for my father, who's an engineer in the crowd. If anybody's in that mindset, it's a very, very rigid mindset. We see problems and we see solutions. And with this mindset, and this is the way I was brought up, that there's problems and then you have solutions. That you don't just, there's a lot of theories out there, but I always look at things very concretely. And for anybody who's worked with me, most often, I don't really work well in grays. There's a problem, I find it, I fix it. It's not much of a gray zone. But keeping that in mind, you'll understand a lot more of my speech if you keep that in the back of your head, that everything I say is I see something as a problem and I want to find a solution to it. So in no way am I trying to push down certain rights when I talk about this, because I think that all human rights are valid. I think that everyone who's fighting for human rights, there's a validity to it. But the human rights I'm going to focus on are very, very basic rights. I mean rights such as the rights to have clean water, the right to have food in your belly at night, and the rights to have safe shelter. These just fundamental, very concrete rights are the ones that I focus on a lot in my work. So as I said in the biography of me, it talks a lot about that disaster side. So if we keep that in mind, maybe you guys won't judge me as much when I continue with my speech now. So as it said, I've traveled not as much as I would want, not as much as Mr. Sims, and by the way, Mr. Sims is an amazing gentleman. If you get to speak to him after or during the panel discussion, he really has some insights about the world that are truly just amazing. And also his book is pretty good for the quickness that I went through it. But I've seen in the world, a lot of times, it's the basic rights that aren't being upheld are the reasons why the future rights, the other rights, the bigger rights, the writings for votes, the rights for everything, the reason why they don't get upheld is because the basic rights that we have aren't being upheld. If you go to bed hungry, how are you supposed to think about it? If you go to bed hungry and you're thirsty when you go to bed, and you don't even have a home above, you don't have a roof above your house, then how are you supposed to go to bed? I mean, how are you supposed to vote? How are you supposed to think about that? It's just these basic rights that you need these stepping stones. It's like the foundation of a home. We need to make sure that when we go around, that we're supporting groups also, like the groups that we're supporting tonight, that really touch upon the basic rights. And also starting with children is always one of the best ways to start, because it's the next generation that's just going to take it up. I tried to write a script tonight, by the way, for this, and a lot of people might notice that I'm kind of going off the script. And that's what I always do at every JHR event and every JHR meeting. I try to stick to a script, but as my mother told me, you gotta speak from the heart and you gotta speak what feels right in the moment. So I kind of go with what the crowd's feeling and the smiles I see when I speak about something. But I have seen flagrant disregards for proper journalism in the context of Haiti, I'm gonna speak of. And I think that this is something that's reflected across many countries and in a lot of disaster zones. And before I speak more about disaster zones, disaster does not mean an earthquake. A disaster does not only mean a tsunami. A disaster could be man-made disasters. A war zone is a disaster of sorts. It is a disaster that's been created by man, but it's not a natural disaster. So keeping that in mind. So when we go to disaster zones such as Haiti, you see that there's the worst side of humanity at times. But also within these disaster zones, you really see the best part of humanity. You see this binary of the greatest good that people can do, but also the worst that people can do. You see people trying to profit off the backs of people who are already down, people who are down in their luck before the earthquake happens, and then get brought down to an even deeper level after the earthquake, and then even after that are being profited on. One good example I could talk about, I worked for 5 weeks at a hospital, which I'll have to keep it remaining nameless at this point. I worked at this hospital first as a psychological first aid, so I would just speak to people that were waiting and ask them what did they go through, how was it, and just to let them relive these moments. Because reliving the moments can help you deal with the stresses. I mean, post-traumatic stress is something people didn't talk about at first after Haiti, but the amount of post-traumatic stress there, people still don't want to live inside a house with a roof. After you've seen your whole family get crushed within a building, why would you ever want to step foot into a building again? So, for the first 2 weeks, I was just doing psychological first aid with people at the hospital. And then I moved on to more administrative roles towards donations, where I would go into these 3 large rooms that were built post-earthquake to house all the international good. All the international donations, the money, the catheters, the medication, everything that people sent would get put into these large 3 rooms in the hospital. And at first, I thought I was doing a lot of good because I would see myself every day. I was dirty because I was carrying boxes every day and moving all this good, and I could feel good. You know, you're moving boxes, there's a sense of pride you get when at the end of the day your arms hurt because you moved so many boxes of medication. There's just a sense of pride. Just imagine it now. It's like when you finish moving into a new house, that sense of pride you have when you open the last box, you drop the last box, you feel that you've accomplished something. And I was going through piles and piles and piles of medication. I was doing an inventory for everything, seeing what this hospital had, to see the good that we could actually do with the medication we had and all the goods. But then after a while, I noticed that we weren't really using much of the medication or anything. We were just categorizing it, and it was almost like we were just sent there to have something to do, because we were international volunteers, and they wanted us to take photos, and they wanted us to look like we were working. And something just seemed odd to me. But I didn't think too much of it, then I went on a trip, and I went on to the south of Haiti, an area that was very, very minimally affected by the earthquake. It was an area that is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life, where it was the first time they had seen a white man who wasn't a preacher, because there was only one man there, and it was the priest of the church. So when I was just there myself, with a much larger beard than I have now, and crazy hair not combed nicely, they were thrown off by this man who was just living in the woods. So I really got this. The kids would come up to me in the morning and they'd just be shyly far away and look at me. Why is this guy living in the woods? They would keep on asking these questions because they'd never seen this before. So this brought me to start appreciating a different side of Haiti, because all I had seen was really the destruction that we see in the media, but also nothing else. It was just what I had seen. And I had never seen the good side, the beauty beyond the rubble of Haiti. So then when I came back to the hospital, after this self-discovery of sorts, of the beauty of a culture before the destruction, because it's easy to come into a country that's been destroyed and to just see the destruction and assume that this is how they've lived always, this is how it should be, and we're just going to be here and fix it. But then when you see the beauty that it actually can be, and this is the people that have made this beauty, you have a different motivation. So at this time, I started working with the United States Virgin Islands as a consultant, and what I would do is prepare clinics. So we'd get ready to make clinics, and we'd been planning these remote clinics in the mountains, and I've been putting all my energy into it, and we'd finally gotten 2 doctors who volunteered their weekends to come up with us to perform these remote clinics. And we had found everything we needed. We even found donated goods from another organization, so we didn't have to take anything from the hospital, because we thought the hospital was really using it for good. We didn't want to take the goods that we didn't have. And then we took 2 sleeping bags. So keep this in your head, 2 sleeping bags. We then went into the remote mountains. We did amazing clinics. It was one of the best times of my life. I can't speak enough about how generous people are in the countryside there. But then coming back, I was brought into the director of the hospital's office. And at first, myself being a somewhat cocky guy by nature, I was like, oh, he's going to thank me, saying that I did a great job by performing these 2 clinics in these remote communities, and praise me. And I don't know, I guess my hero trip was at that point. But to my surprise, I was actually being yelled at in Creole. And at this point, I had not comprehended the language fully. I wasn't as fluent as I thought, but I could understand he was mad at me, and I couldn't understand why, and why was he just so upset? And the main reason that he was upset was because I had taken his sleeping bags. So I told him, like, well, we needed sleeping bags. We're in the mountains, it's cold, the doctors need to be warm. It's like, no, you took our sleeping bags. If you want them, you're gonna have to pay. So this kind of took me back, and I started to realize things after this, where anytime an organization was asking this one area, this one hospital, for goods, they would never give them to them. And I noticed this more and more, that my inventory sheet it never went down. It stayed at the exact same amount that I had written for a month before when I had gotten there. I then started walking around the hospital grounds a little bit more just to see, because I started getting an investigative hinge that something was just not right in this hospital. And then I found that they were actually taking the goods that was donated from people around the world, and they were reselling them to the patients that were supposed to get them for free. But not only were they reselling them for the services, they would charge them for every part. So if you were to get an IV, which is a very, very common treatment because of dysentery, the first treatment you do is you put an IV in, so you get your fluids back. They would charge for the IV bag, the IV tube, and then the IV needle. But these were all things being donated by people in Canada, people in the States, people from around the world, and other hospitals also in Haiti that were donating goods to this hospital, thinking this was a hospital that had a lot of affected people. So this really, really kind of destroyed my faith in this organization when I saw that they were taking goods and selling them to people, which is just a horrible thing to see. Needless to say, after my confrontation and my butchered Creole to try to talk back to the director, I got kicked out of that hospital because I tried to talk back and I didn't know much Creole, so I probably said something that was not very nice. We won't speak of it now. But I kind of let it aside, and I decided that I would contact some media agencies in Canada. Because I had done, as it's described in the biography, I had spoken for different news agencies doing live debriefs for the anniversary of the Haitian earthquake, just to tell people what it was like, what people were doing at this point, to tell them pretty much just everything that was going on and give a general context of what was happening in Haiti. Sorry. And then when I sent out messages about this, which I thought was a gigantic story, to no avail. I had no one's come back to me, no emails back, and no phone calls, and I kind of then lost my faith also in journalism as a practice when I realized a story that I was certain as a journalist, I was certain that this was a big story. No one seemed to care about it. So then you fast forward a couple of months, I decided to work for another organization, and I tried to think, I'm just not going to deal with journalism anymore. It's kind of when I lost my love for journalism and everything, and I decided I'm just going to work at what I'm good at, and that's disaster management. So I started just working for another NGO called Grassroots United, which doesn't exist anymore. I think they're Unitaire Créole now. It's they changed their name. So if you Google it, but you can still find it as Grassroots United. And I started just running medical clinics and running other projects. And we created our own 60-foot geodesic dome where we would take in all the donated goods that we could find and then just give them out for free. It was kind of my payback because I knew that I couldn't do it at the hospital. So to make myself feel good before I left, I need to know that I left at least giving some goods to somebody. So we ran that for a while. But then I get a phone call back from the news agency. And at this point, I remember I had sent out all those emails. Maybe it just took so long. Maybe it got put in spam. I'm sending from a different server. Maybe all these maybes and maybes that are going through me as I'm trying to figure out why it's taken so long. And then when they're like, can we call you? We need to call you. We have a story that we want you to cover. I'm like, okay, what's the story? Is it going to be the story I broke? In the end, they wanted to cover, I don't know if anybody in the room can remember Wyclef Jean when he ran for president of Haiti? Yeah, when the rapper superstar tried to run for Haiti. In the election, sorry. That's the story they wanted to cover. But to be honest, I was like, well, I might as well cover the story. Maybe I get to put in some things after. We'll do a live debrief. And I get a phone call, and there's, okay, you're going to air in 5. I'm good. I had spent the whole day talking to Haitians in the community, everywhere in the different clinics we were doing, asking them about Wyclef Jean. And to be honest, nobody cared. When you don't have food or water, you don't care about Wyclef Jean running for president of Haiti. You don't care about these things. So then I did my debrief, and I sold my soul to journalism at that point and just talked about how Wyclef Jean, yeah, he's running for the elections, in pretty much that exact same voice. And, you know, the generic radio voice. So I pretty much sold my soul to journalism at that point. Then halfway through the interview, I decide, I can't do this. Like, I can't sell my soul this much. And I say, well, you know, I've been in Haiti for about 2 months now, and I think I finally comprehend the situation. And I think I finally understand what's going on here, and that I can talk about it. My response I get from the other end is, okay, so tell us, are there any posters about Wyclef Jean? Completely brushed them off. So at this point, my faith in humanity and also in journalism has gone to pretty much zero at this point. It was already comparatively low. I don't know if you're keeping score of my faiths in humanity and journalism. But then at the end, kudos to the anchor. I guess he had to kill for time, or he knew himself that there was a story that was bigger than what his producers wanted him to cover. Asked Arndell, you've been there, you've been in Haiti. What do you see as someone on the ground? And I just let the floodgates open. I described how I had seen flagrant disregard for human rights, flagrant disregards for humanity in general, where donated goods were being sold to people, but these goods were already donated. And then I told them also about how there were funds that were created after the earthquake for pregnant women to be able to give birth, and each hospital got this money. I also told on the radio about how in the hospital I was working in, women were giving birth on the street in the dry clay on the street, because the hospital was refusing them treatment, because if they refused the treatment, they still have the money in the hospital. So it was for no other reason than to pad their pocketbooks. So outside my office, I would hear women screaming all the time, and I kept on thinking it was someone who's getting shot, because there's a lot of gang incidents, so I was used to that. And I would look outside and see that it was just a lady outside squatting over the dirt, giving birth in a parking lot of clay. And when they would be done, all that would be left is a dark, dark stain on the clay of where they're giving birth. So I told this story, and nothing came of it after that, which was something I found really odd, because I feel right now by the silence in the room that people were affected by this. So that's why Journalists for Human Rights is important. That's why when I came back and I heard that they were creating a chapter, I knew that I wanted to work for a form of journalism that in a way would actually cover stories that matter. Stories that I think will educate us all and help. And the reason why I'm going on this tangent now is that my reasoning for Journalists for Human Rights, and what I think it does well, is it gets people to start listening to stories that they are maybe a little bit uncomfortable with. If I made you uncomfortable at all with some descriptions tonight, I would like to say I'm sorry, but I'm not very sorry whatsoever. I hope that you have this discomfort. And the reason why I want you to be uncomfortable is that human rights abuses aren't a comfortable issue. If we want to see change anywhere in the world, you can't be comfortable and do it. You can't be in your house watching TV on a comfortable couch to see these human rights abuses and to get change to happen in the world. If we want change in the world, we have to be the change that we want to see in the world. So with JHR, one of the focuses, what we try to focus on, are stories that people don't want to normally see. It's not the fluff stories. It's not the stories that you normally see on the metro and the paper. We want to show them the stories that are actually changing the world, the problems around the world. And within JHR, the people that I work with are actually one of the main reasons that keeps me going, because halfway through, I wasn't certain if I could continue as a presidential role, because I'm normally more of the clown role, and being the president, you get to be a little more serious. But the people I work with are some of the most outstanding journalists in the world. These are people who are willing to risk their own lives, even in Canada, to report on stories. I won't say names, but there's even one of our journalists who's probably going to start blushing if they're in the room. I won't give you hints. Within writing an article about the crimes against humanity that happened in Sri Lanka, wrote an article that really just said what the war in Sri Lanka really was. What was the truth that was there? What was the truth of the situation? After writing the story and publishing it on a university blog, by all means, he received death threats from people. People already tried to censor his story. He's one of the motivations for me, knowing that if he's getting death threats, he's doing something right, and I haven't got one yet, so clearly I'm doing something wrong. So it kind of pushes me to go a little bit further. But also, other people I work with who come from countries where you're not allowed speaking out about the government. If you speak out about the government, it means that your father, or your mother, or your cousin is going to get killed. Even if you're in Canada and you're safe, if you were to say one thing wrong, that then back home, there will be repercussions to you. So the fact that the people that I work with are willing to take these risks only for a student club at a university, I don't know if you need any more motivation than that to run a club. Knowing that these are the risks that people who are in their 20s, 21, 22, 23, just in university, taking these huge risks to try to spread this message and this information to people, just the general public. This is the type of journalism that I would love to see happen in the world. And I think what we need to do is that us as a consumer society, especially in Canada, we all are comfortable. Even the least comfortable person is a lot more comfortable than other places in the world. We're not being shelled. we can get running water. Even there is a huge homeless problem in Canada, but still, if they need water, they can find it. I'm not saying that there's anything good about the homeless problem in Canada, by the way. I'm just saying that, I mean, there's countries where if you need water and you don't have it, you're dead. So I think as a consumer base here, as people who watch media, consume media, and you're all here tonight, so clearly you have a vested interest in learning and in knowledge and in spreading rights awareness. I think that as a people, we need to start asking this, not even asking, demanding this from our media. Stop clicking on the cat parade videos when you go onto your Yahoo page. Stop clicking on the 10 ways to impress your man on your Yahoo page. Start clicking on the Bahrain story at the bottom. Start clicking on the Syria story. Start clicking on stories that you think that maybe might make you a little bit more uncomfortable. One thing that I really want to get across through this, and you can be with me or against me, and I'm fine with this, but I think that if you took 5 minutes out of the month, 5 minutes out of the month, and just looked at a story that made you uncomfortable, that registers on Google, that registers on Facebook. When you look at those videos, they notice what you're looking at, and they will keep on bringing more of that to you, because Google censors your searches. If you start searching cat parade video, you're only going to get cat parade videos all the time. So everybody in here took 5 minutes a month. Okay, 5 minutes a week. How about 5 minutes a day? How about 5 minutes on your lunch break? And just search up a story that makes you a little bit uncomfortable. A story that when you read it, it gives you a little bit of a shiver. A story that when you read it, it makes you think of your daughter, your son, your father, your mother, and makes you shrug a little bit and it makes you sad. If it makes you disgusted, that's even better. A story that really changes the world. Because if we just keep on watching media the way it is right now, and we keep on watching this, I have to censor myself, this bad media. I think some people guess the word I was thinking. So if you keep on watching this bad media, that's what they're going to give you. I mean, I work in the media industry. I know how journalism works. I see producers all the time, and everybody in JHR knows the same thing, that we are editors. We're the gatekeepers of what you see. And if you start asking for really good media, good journalism, good pieces, then that's what you're going to get. So if the last thing in my last couple seconds here that I want to get across to you is take those 5 minutes on your lunch break. Take those 5 minutes in a day when you get home. Take those 5 minutes a week. Or if you can't even do that, take 5 minutes a month. And with those 5 minutes, look at something that makes you uncomfortable, and then go outside and tell a friend. And just there, with everybody in this room, with my rough estimate, that would make about 200 people that would know a story. Everybody in this room took 5 minutes and just talked about it to one single person. So I just want to end on a quote that has kind of driven me throughout my whole life, and I'm not certain who said it, and I'm assuming someone will yell it out who said it. And it's something that I sign in every email that I send out with JHR, is that true evil is when good men do nothing. I'll rephrase it. True evil is when good men and women do nothing. If we do nothing, then evil wins. So, thank you very much for listening.